Today I'm sitting down with Mariel Cartwright, who's become one of the most important figures on the arts side at Lab Zero.
Great.
How are you?
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm doing okay.
I heard that you, I saw that you posted some tweets somewhere along the lines of, I had no idea how much work this would be.
Yeah. I kind of have a lot of titles on this game now. So I'm now art director, lead animator, and very recently head of story on Indivisible.
How many hats can you put on that head?
I don't know. We're going to find out. So far it's 3. I don't know what's going to happen next.
Awesome. So let's start, as I always do, with the beginning of your education and leading into the industry. Mm-hmm. You started out at the California Institute of the Arts back in 2005, mm-hmm. and from everything I've read, you pretty much knew you wanted a career in games. Was that the case?
You know what? I've always wanted to do art, just whole life. But I think actually for most of my teens, I wanted to go more into comics. Even though I had played games my entire life, it didn't actually occur to me until I was in college for animation, and I was thinking do animation, comics, whatever. It wasn't until college that I realized that you can actually get a job in games. Like, I don't know why that didn't occur to me. And from there, in college, I was like, oh, actually, I have always loved games. Why don't I actually try doing that instead? So it kind of helped that I was already in school for animation. You can kind of just like do a lot of different things in animation. But yeah, even though I've always played, it actually wasn't until college that I was like, oh, this is actually what I want to do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's fairly common for students to have, assumptions about what post-college life is going to be like, mm-hmm. and then they step out into the real world and everything just gets dashed. Did you have any experiences like that, or was it kind of a smooth transition from college to working artist?
It actually wasn't too bad for me because the first several years of working for me was just freelance. And I started freelancing while I was still in school. Just like, I think it was like my 3rd and 4th years, or maybe just my 4th. Yeah, my 4th year of school, I just started freelancing, and I worked a little bit like for Way Forward. I did a thing for Konami. Toward the end of that, I started working for Ubisoft, just, at home over email and all that stuff. So as soon as I graduated, it was just like, well, I'm already doing this thing. I'll just keep doing it. So yeah, it actually wasn't bad at all for me. I got lucky there.
So you got kind of an early start on working on industry projects, and so it wasn't that much of a stretch to kind of parlay that into a full-time thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So you did work on Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and a couple projects at Way Forward. Is there anything you can point at to concretely and be like, that was me?
Like in those games?
Yes. In any Way Forward project or maybe Scott Pilgrim.
So Scott Pilgrim, I did, I think, all of the NPC animations. So just anyone hopping around in the background, that was me. I think I worked on a couple enemies a little bit. But yeah, it ended up that all the background characters were offloaded to me. And then I did an early version of the title screen, but I think it was changed a little bit for the final one. And as far as Way Forward goes, so the first thing I worked on for them was Barbie and the Three Musketeers for the Wii. And what it was they had, I think, God, was it DS or 3DS? I don't remember. It might have been DS at the time.
At that time, I think it might have been DS.
Yeah, okay. So I think they had a DS version of this game that they were kind of like redoing for the Wii. So they gave me just like the old pixel assets of like HUD and icons and stuff. And then I made those like all not HD, but like, Wii screen size.
Right. Wii resolution.
Yes, Wii resolution. And then I drew this little like shopkeeper girl. That was cute.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was one of my first things.
How'd you get those jobs?
So I guess I should also mention, I think there's two things that happened around the same time, in like the middle of, I think it was 2009. I had my work in my school's job fair. I had my portfolio out, and I was completely ignored except for two companies that noticed me. One was Family Guy, and the other was Way Forward. And Matt Bozon at Way Forward, I think, saw my stuff at the job fair and really liked my stuff. And, he reached out. And then another guy at Way Forward reached out to me as well and, asked if I would work on the Barbie stuff. And that was how I started working with Way Forward. But then around the same time, I also had Konami reach out to me. Tom Hewlett at Konami, who was the producer on the Silent Hill games at the time, was, I think, just a fan of my work. Like, I was posting my stuff online on a site we called the Visublog back at the time. And I think he just caught on that I liked Silent Hill. And so he reached out and asked if I would do the UFO ending for Silent Hill Shattered Memories. So this, it was totally random. Just stroke of luck.
Yeah, a little bit of serendipity there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were friends with Alex Ahad while he was pitching Skullgirls. So what exactly led to your becoming lead animator on that game? Did you call him? Did he call you? What happened?
So that was like in late 2008, early 2009. He was just kind of like asking his friends to help animate on Skullgirls. And I don't think they had started pitching right when I was on it, but like they were still just doing that very early first build of the game with Mike Z. And so I was just helping to animate on.
Is this the all Philia build?
Yeah. Okay. So I was just helping on that. And Alex would pay me a little bit out of pocket, so that kind of helped, just pay my bills a little bit. And then they started like pitching it and things are going well and, talked to Reverge and Autumn and all this stuff. And as we were actually realizing like, oh my God, this could be our real jobs, I just asked Alex, like, can I be the lead? I'm pretty organized. I think this is something I could do. And he said, sure. That was really kind of it. I just thought that, generally I'm organized. And I don't have a problem kind of like helping out and directing people a little bit. So I just thought that was something that I could do.
Interesting. Okay, so let's go back a bit. Halfway through your time at California Institute of the Arts, you started an art blog with some friends called Mecha Fetus. One of those friends was Jonathan Kim, a guy you'd end up working with numerous times in the following years, and eventually will become something of an animation counterpart at Lab Zero. That's still going on today. To what do you attribute that enduring working relationship with him in particular? Because you, it's, you have friends in college and sometimes you try to work with them and normally everyone drifts apart to some extent, but you still work with John often, all the time now. John and I just met in our first year at Cal Arts and we just kind of like clicked immediately. We got along great. We found that we, bounced ideas off each other great. We've just always worked really well together, and he's been one of my best friends, like, since then. And it just also happened that, we're generally in the same circles of friends that do a bunch of cool stuff. And so it's just kind of worked out that we've brought each other, into the projects we're working on. We've introduced each other to the same people. That's kind of it. We've just always worked together for some reason. you had a Twitter exchange with him where you posted a shot of, if I remember correctly, pineapple sushi.
Oh God, yeah, it was.
And you said it was shockingly good for where you got it from. And you were like, can I even, I think you said, how can I even call myself Japanese?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like strawberry and mango, like just chopped up on top of some California rolls. And it was really weird and not as terrible as it looked. And yes, it was from Walgreens.
Walgreens, that was it. You get at Walgreens a lot. What it wasn't? Didn't you look at a $3,000 bottle of champagne at Walgreens recently?
We just moved into this new office, and it's in the middle of Hollywood, and it's super great because the place itself is really nice, and we're just surrounded by good food and tons of coffee. And this freaking like the fanciest Walgreens I've ever seen. It's on.
It's a Hollywood Walgreens.
Yeah. Is it Hollywood and Vine, or it's just like the street below, or Sunset and Vine, I think. And yeah, it's just this inexplicably nice Walgreens for some reason. So, we'll go on breaks and just grab drinks or freaking sushi at this Walgreens.
It's an artisanal Walgreens. That's really cool.
There's also a Starbucks across the street from it that serves wine. So it's just like the area that this is. It's weird.
I wonder if people who are used to that go other places and they see a Walgreens and are just shocked and appalled.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, it's weird.
A few years back now, you gave an excellent GDC presentation on animation, which was recently made publicly available.
Mm-hmm.
It was clear that you were very nervous up on stage.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was.
And you've also expressed in the past that you're not especially comfortable in front of a camera or a bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
I don't know. I mean, I think I'm just a little bit of a shy person in general. I always want to produce work, and it's like if people know me, I want it to be because they know my work. Like I don't think I am an interesting person particularly. So it's like here's my drawings. Just look at my drawings, and that's kind of it. But I guess over the years, it kind of became clear to other people that maybe I had something to say. Just that I've had these experiences in 2D animation on games, which itself is kind of like not rare, but when there's so many 3D games out there, there's definitely
it's certainly
less
in the minority.
Yeah. And so that first GDC talk happened just because the two guys that run the animation boot camp at GDC, it's Tim Borelli and Mike Jungbluth, they reached out to me and said, "Hey, we think you would do a great animation talk on 2D animation in games. Do you want to do that?" And for me, it got me into GDC free for that year. And then again, it's like I think it kind of comes back to that I was okay being like a lead animator, because I think sometimes like I am okay at kind of like showing or directing or helping people. So it kind of just tied back into that a little bit, where it's like, oh, maybe I do know something, that I could teach people. So I did it, and it was terrifying. And
how many people were there?
God, I don't know, like several hundred.
What did
maybe?
it feel like, rather? Maybe is a better question. How many people did it feel like were there?
Oh God,
staring at
yeah,
you?
like a million. I mean, it was a pretty big room, and there were, plenty of people filling the room. It was weird because once you're up there, actually, the lights are so bright that you actually kind of can't see everyone.
Stage lights, yeah.
Yeah. So it helped a little bit, but yeah, it's like I'm not like a very typically public facing person. So it was scary, but I survived.
Have you been like that like your whole life?
I think so, yeah. I don't know, just generally shy, reserved. I get people who, like, I hear back from people that have met me for the first time that say I'm very cold, I look mean, I look bored, I look like a bitch. And it's just, it's not that I am being mean, it's just that I am terrified. And I think that's just kind of like my normal demeanor in like spaces I don't know. So I don't know.
It's funny that you say that because I remember, because I mean, before I met you in person, which is, I mean, it's been well over a year now, but before I met you in person, all I really had to go on was, say, the rare picture of you, which you typically don't share, photography of you, but you do draw self-portraits. And I think you may be the most accurate self-portraiture of all time, because when I saw you, I felt like you had communicated everything about yourself to me in those pictures, because you would always draw yourself like wrapped up in blankets or sipping on coffee or like kind of like just very kind of insular. You have that I call it the poor circulation stance, where you feel cold and so you almost hug yourself. So I never got the impression that you were cold or distant or being a bitch. I actually felt you were totally honest about self-portrayal.
Yeah, I'm like perpetually tired. I have big bags under my eyes, and I'm just head down on the desk.
Yeah, you share self-portrait sketches with some regularity, and there's definitely a trend of you portraying yourself unfavorably. You often draw yourself as frazzled, stressed, or even when you're sick. Why do you share those moments, those portrayals of yourself exactly? What motivates you to share that side?
I don't know. That's just how I normally feel. I see from a lot of other artists that they share that they're always super happy and, optimistic. And it's not that I'm unhappy or unoptimistic, but I don't know. I'm always working. I'm always tired. It is just kind of like my normal state.
Do you seek that out?
I think for me, I try to put, like, I try to spend as much of my time working as possible, because this is maybe like a little bit of a problem I have, where I kind of like base my self-worth on how much work I'm doing. So I do have a tendency to work too much. I know I burn out, like I have burned out frequently enough, just because I just get to this point where I'm like, oh my God, I got to keep working, got to keep doing stuff. It's not the best way to live, probably. But yeah, I don't know. It's like, I'm fortunate enough that my work, like my job, is the thing that I also love to do. So I never like really like feel bad or like regret like burning out, because it's like I was still doing something that I was very passionate about. But I think I still, like, regardless, do have the tendency to just kind of like work too much and, work after work and then work weekends and, all that stuff. I'm perpetually tired.
So if you somehow like inexplicably broke both your hands and you couldn't work,
I would probably kill myself.
You'd lose it. You'd lose it entirely.
Yeah, probably. I need to like insure my hands or something like that.
You ever seen Metalocalypse?
I haven't. I want to.
Oh my! There's a great scene where the lead guitarist gets his hands insured and has to put them in like little airtight chambers when he's not playing.
Sounds like something I should do.
Yeah, I imagine you with like two crystal glass, seals on your hands when you're off work. Ever since humans could first make cave paintings, they have been drawing the female form. And in that tradition, many of your sketches focus on female physicality, often with long hair, slender curves, and these very kind of almost alluring doe-eyed expressions, speaking to a sense of heightened femininity, so much so that they seem almost reverential. The intent doesn't seem to be deconstruction, or do they strike me as, vainly gratuitous. How would you describe these sketches, and what makes you continually revisit that kind of exemplar?
I mean, it's hard to say exactly, because I think just from the start, I've always liked girls, cool female characters, women that are like very strong, just like physically and sexually, and I don't know, confident. Girls that look like they think about stuff. So it's I don't know, maybe a little bit of everything that I love women. I love the female form. And I can express that in my art. I never get tired of it. So yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of always been that way.
Tell me about your art in connection to Japan. How do you feel because the thing is, again, this goes back to, you said, how can I call myself Japanese? I like this damn this damn gaijin sushi. But what is it? Where does Japan fit inside the sphere of Mariel Cartwright?
So it's conflicting for me because I am half Japanese. My mom is from the Kansai area, like Osaka, that kind of stuff. But I've always lived here. And my Japanese is terrible. And like, I feel like, I don't know, like this is something that I really wrestle with personally, because I'm half Japanese, but I can't speak the language. I don't really have like a very deep connection with Japanese culture. So I feel like in a way it's something I've both been brought up in, but also feel like I need to connect to. Like I don't want to lose that part of myself. And also it's also just weird being biracial because you so rarely meet anyone like yourself. That like it's really hard to articulate that it's not difficult per se, because I don't have the same experiences as, say, a Black person that has been, had experiences of prejudice their whole life. Like I don't have that. But it's still weird. It's like this weird middle ground where I don't belong anywhere. I don't know where I'm going with that. It's got really sad.
No, I mean, I know what you mean. There's a sense of common humanity that people naturally seek out. And I think it's very natural to want to be around people that make you feel like you're not alone.
Right.
We have all these different ways we explore that. We don't want to be socially alone. We don't want to be without friends. We don't want to be without a lover. We don't want to be without parental figures or compatriots, fraternal and sororal identities that we have. But yeah, racial is a big thing when you feel like you can't look around and see yourself very often. It cuts right down to the human condition.
Yeah, so for me, it's like I've always wanted to kind of connect with that part of myself more, but it's been like hard when, I don't know really many other Japanese people. I'm not surrounded by a Japanese community. Like actually, growing up, most of my girlfriends were Korean. And so in a way, I feel like I almost have like a bigger connection with some Korean aspects of like Korean culture than I do with Japanese. And that's, I don't know, it's weird. It's like all over the place. So I don't know.
You sound very much like a person from California.
Yep.
It is, yeah, you'll get a lot of that.
Yeah.
How did you meet Tyson Hess?
I guess I should say, maybe for people that don't know, he's my boyfriend right now. And I met him through Skullgirls, actually. He was just one of the other animators that Alex had asked to help animate on Skullgirls. And so when I became lead, he was one of our animators on the game. He worked from like Philia to around... Oh, actually, no, he was kind of on and off. So he was pretty consistent, I think, from like Philia to Misfortune. Then I think he started doing some other stuff, but he came back to like work on Valentine. So he was part of it for the whole project, kind of like on and off. But at the time, I only knew him just from work. And then it wasn't until a couple of years ago that he went to Comic-Con. I think it was his first Comic-Con. It was like his first time in California. And I usually go, every year, and I thought I'd say hi to him. Just being that he was someone that I worked with. And I don't know, we actually hit it off pretty quick. We became good friends pretty quick. Just kind of went from there, I guess.
So, I mean, most of the time, the company one chooses to keep romantically has very little bearing on their work, except for the fact that you both work in almost exactly the same field and have worked together on things before. So you have a very interesting additional facet to your relationship in that there may be times when you say, here's what I did, boss. And that's the thing you do that moment. And then later it's, you sit down and watch Netflix. But the thing that I know you most, having worked on with him, and there may be other things you can tell me, is Diesel. You worked on, I believe, coloring that with him?
Yeah. I just did flats.
Okay. So what is it? Do you guys work together often? And what is it like with you both being artists inside the relationship? Is there a big brush and a little brush in that relationship?
I guess for me, just in general, I have dated artists, just because I don't know, I find that I relate best to other artists.
It happens a lot more with artists than technical sorts. I've noticed, because I work technically, I work artistically, and I'm married to the singer in my band. Like, for example, artists, I think, seek out other artists for very interesting reasons, but you don't hear about like two database managers getting married like very often,
right.
And so that's, but how does that work for you guys?
I mean, for us, like, I think a reason our relationship works is just because, we have our own things that we work on. I'm working on Indivisible or Skullgirls, and he's working on Diesel or Sonic or Boxer Hawk. He has all these, comics, or sometimes you're like bored for shows and stuff. And it just kind of works out where it's like, hey, I can't get this drawing down. Can you help me out? Or, hey, I need help coloring this thing. We both have tight deadlines. So it's just kind of like, getting feedback from each other, just like helping each other, and like, pinches. And I don't know. It's like we haven't come up with like an original thing together. And, maybe if we ever have the time, we could do that. But like the way it is right now, it's like I work 10 feet away from him. He needed help doing colors on Diesel, and it's like, well, I'm right here. Why don't I just do it? And similarly, I'll be working on something that I can't just get right, and I'll just pass the PSD to him, and he's like, here, well, why don't you try this? So yeah, it works out just because we both want the same thing. And so we just kind of like help each other achieve it.
So it's fully reciprocal and mostly just serves to enrich you both.
Yeah, it works out. And I think our relationship in particular works so well because most of the time we are just working. I mean, we our place, we just turned the master bedroom into our office. And yeah, most of every night, I come home and we just go back to our computers and we work, and then we take breaks together. And that's kind of like the way we spend our time together. But we work very much the same way, and then just help each other out when we need it. So it works out pretty well.
Let's jump back to the modern era. Mm-hmm. To keep the dream alive after Skullgirls, Lab Zero launched an all-or-nothing crowdfunding campaign for a new game called Indivisible. Mm-hmm. Early momentum wasn't so hot, though.
No.
and for a time, things were looking a little bleak.
Uh-huh.
I know team morale wasn't especially high during that time. Uh-huh. Can you tell me more about how everyone was dealing with that? Because you know how you can see from across the room when somebody is like not there mentally. Mm-hmm. I felt like some people I could see from across emails or messages or something. There were some long 1,000-yard stares happening.
Right.
So how was everyone doing at that time?
Bad. Yeah, it was hard because it was like we had put so much work into this prototype that we thought was going to be the thing that just, like, we see so many other crowdfunding campaigns where you see an awesome pitch and some awesome concept art and it just never happens, or the game doesn't look like what they pitched initially. And we just thought, like, well, we see all these problems. Why don't we make a crowdfunding campaign that addresses all those problems, where we have, a really solid pitch that actually describes the game that we want to make, and then we'll friggin' make the game. And we put a little over 3 months of work into just this prototype where we tried to just make a really good, solid, kind of like little tiny slice of this game we wanted to make. And I think kind of what happened is we had put so much work into that prototype that maybe we did actually neglect some of the like hyping up that the campaign itself needed. So then as soon as the campaign started and things didn't take off like we had really hoped, everyone was just like, oh shit, what did we just do? Like, we spent all this time and effort on this prototype. We thought we had solved the problem that everyone had with crowdfunding campaigns, where it's like they don't know what the game is going to be. So it was weird. It was not great. And for me in particular, and this gets a little bit personal, my mom had, like, around that time been diagnosed with cancer. And so during the campaign, I was down in San Diego with her while she was getting treatment, and it was just this whole big thing. So I was also, like, very emotionally removed from the whole thing entirely because my thoughts were just with my family. Like, I was just physically not even in LA. I was in San Diego. So yeah, it was a weird time overall. And yeah, thankfully, like, we got that little bump that kind of allowed us to extend the campaign. And then at the end we made it, but it was a rough, what was it, like 2 months?
Yeah, it went on for a while.
That's a long campaign. Because
I think it was 40 and 20, right? That was the extension, was 20 more days.
Yeah, that was weird. So yeah, we're obviously, like, incredibly grateful that it worked out in the end. But it was rough. It was really rough for most of it.
Did you, because I know when you have relatives and you're sitting there watching them not at their best, and that mood kind of pushes its way outward into the rest of your thoughts. Did you kind of get a sense when you were there in San Diego, did you ever kind of have those thoughts to yourself where you just felt like, man, I have sick mother, I have failing project, everything sucks, why is this happening? Like,
yeah, I mean, at that time, I wasn't even thinking about the campaign that much. I felt like I just had so many bigger things to worry about. Like I was wrestling with potentially losing my mother, which thankfully she's actually doing really well now.
She made it too.
Yeah. So that both things worked out in the end. But like, yeah, just emotionally, I was in a very different place than the campaign at that time. Yeah, I couldn't spare like the mental space to be thinking about the campaign. It is like, and it was hard because we all needed to promote it and stuff like that. But
you just couldn't.
Yeah, it wasn't a great time for me or my family.
So you really didn't even have the capacity at the time to engage with how the campaign was going. It was kind of a far off negative that you just were not able to deal with at the time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
And it was hard also, like, for me to not be there with the rest of the team, because I think obviously they understood that I was going through some shit. But it also sucks for them that I couldn't be there with them to kind of like, help them through this hard thing. So yeah, overall it was just a weird, bad, difficult time, like on all
Wasn't
ends.
a good 58 days is what you're saying.
I mean, toward the end, like, when we got that extension, it was like, oh my God, maybe we do have a chance. So toward the end, things got a lot better. But yeah, like it was like that first week, we all got together, and immediately it was like, oh, it's not going to make it. Ah, shit, it's not going to make it. Like, yeah, it was weird.
I remember just from talks with, because obviously you were busy and me and you don't have a lot of back and forth correspondence, but some members of the team I do talk to with regularity. And I remember just kind of hearing about at that early stage, there were some, pretty stone-faced conversations about what exactly are we supposed to do with this now? Are we supposed to relaunch it? Are we supposed to move to another platform? Are we supposed to do this or this or this? And
right.
I think it was interesting that holding on and just pushing a little harder was what pulled through in the end, but there were a lot of extra options being bandied about. Did you have at that time, because I mean, now everything's worked out, but at the time, did you feel like you had a horse in the what should we do differently race? Or again, was that just outside of what you were able to talk about with everyone?
I mean, I thought that we should kind of put down the Indiegogo and relaunch it on Kickstarter, like maybe in January. Because there was this weird perception that even if the Indiegogo wouldn't make it, that the game would happen anyways. Because
that actually was really widespread. It was like, no, they'll just run with the money. And I was like, no, you don't get it. They won't get any money if they don't make it.
Right. Yeah. It was like between a misunderstanding of how Indiegogo worked and also maybe us not making it clear what exactly our relationship with our publisher 505 was. And honestly, even though I thought we did make it clear, people would think that we were just like lying or something.
No, they just won't believe. No, that's exactly how crowdfunding had became.
Yeah.
You actually came in at a really bad time for crowdfunding, like notoriety, because there had been a string of high profile, scams basically.
Right.
And, no need to name names. Everybody knows what they are. And it was interesting that you came in and you were like, no, we're the honest ones. And they're like, yeah, sure.
Right.
That's what so many people basically had as an answer to you being like, no, we made a prototype and we're telling you the publisher deal. Everything's on the up and up. And they're like, yeah, what's the catch? That's how so many people reacted.
Right. Yeah. And it was like, maybe we're not getting enough visibility because it's on Indiegogo versus Kickstarter. But yeah, I mean, we were all just trying to figure out like what the fuck do we do? Like if this doesn't make it, like do we just give up and get jobs somewhere else? Do we continue try to pitching this to other publishers that maybe someone will, fund the whole thing? Like I don't know. It like I kept trying to think of like other ways to kind of like revive it, and Mike was really the one that was like, we don't know that it failed until it actually fails. That was something that he reiterated through the whole thing. And in the end, it didn't fail. So, his whole thing was like, we'll worry about it failing when it actually fails, and it didn't fail. So we didn't have to actually pursue any other options. But yeah, it was like just the whole vibe was like, what we tried to do everything right. We tried so hard to address all these problems that other people have with other crowdfunding campaigns. And it's like, why did this go so wrong when we really tried to make it go right? So I don't know. It was strange.
I remember thinking that the pitch video was woefully insufficient for the task. Did you have anything that you pinpointed like, oh, if only we'd done this better?
I think maybe our campaign itself was a little lacking. Like, and we also didn't put a ton of thought. No, it's not to say a ton of thought. Like we thought about the updates we wanted to make, but we didn't spend the time making them beforehand. So a lot of them ended up a little bit rushed. Because the time before the campaign we had spent entirely on the prototype, and we just put all our eggs in that basket, so to speak. So I don't know.
Would you recommend that to another developer now? Because a lot of people felt like, you went to all this work to give people the campaign you thought they wanted, and you basically told us we should have made some, snazzy mock-ups, and like that would have done the same effect. Do you feel like you did all that work and it didn't really have the effect you wanted to? Would you tell another person at another company, yes, do this? Or would you say, I'm not really sure it helped us that much?
I think in the end it did. I think one of the hard things about just crowdfunding that you really have to face with is if you put your idea or your prototype or anything, if you put it out there, you are not entitled to people's money. If people just don't want the thing, that's it. And, even though we did try to put all this effort into the thing that we thought people wanted, it didn't work out. And that's not the public's fault. And I think that's something that we should make really clear. It's like at no point did we think we deserved or were entitled to people's money. But we did think that we thought that we really made something exciting that would go a little bit better than, it ended up doing, at the start. So it's hard to like recommend one way or another to other people that want to crowdfund their game, because again, it's like there's no surefire way to ensure that your thing will get funded, because there is no way of guaranteeing that people will even latch onto your thing, even if you do everything right. I think for us, having the prototype and just being open and honest about just like the realities of what was happening. I think that's why people appreciate our company in general, that we're very honest, even though sometimes we're so honest to the point where people don't believe us. So I don't know. It's hard to like recommend one thing over another when it comes to crowdfunding, because again, you can't guarantee that people even want your idea. I don't know if that made any sense. I don't know.
No, it wasn't 100% on topic, but it was 100% good information. So okay. I'll accept it. I've always, it's what you're saying, that's why the perception of Lab Zero as a company. I've always equated Lab Zero to like a local bar that opens up its own microbrewery. And then you can't help but try to tell people how good this beer is. And they're like, yeah, well, whatever. It's in like this part of town or something. Like, if you just tried it,
right?
you could taste the love. And so no, it's interesting that Lab Zero simply doesn't have the pull of a bigger studio.
Right.
And so even though you maybe, it's kind of an interesting thought exercise to maybe ask, what if some other company that with a household recognition in the gaming community had released that project you released exactly?
Right.
With a prototype and this, maybe a little bit better marketing, something like that. Would there have been articles everywhere about the dawn of a new age of honest, crowdfunding, or would it have gone just as poorly? And, why each way? Just thinking about that in general kind of always is interesting, because I'm of the opinion that had a bigger, more recognizable developer released that quality of a product as a demonstration of its intent, it would have been explosive.
Right.
And I think I don't think the prototype was a bad idea. I think the prototype spoke most to people who were already really big fans. It was basically a reaffirmation of why we would already have bought that game.
Right.
But yeah, from a developer the size of Lab Zero, I don't know if it helped the spread.
Yeah, it's hard because there is so much out of your control, especially as it pertains to like media coverage and just like word of mouth and stuff like that. It's like you can try to put yourself out there as much as you can, but you still also just have to hope that a big news outlet will pick it up. At the very start, we struggled a little bit with that. We didn't get as much media coverage as we were hoping for. So it's like we launched this thing and like no one was really talking about it. And it was like, this is something that's just out of our control. And I don't know exactly why, if it's that people don't really care much about the developers of Skullgirls. Like, what if it was just a bigger studio? Like, I don't know what counts as newsworthy. So yeah, maybe it would have gone better if it was a different studio. I don't know how much it mattered that it was us. Yeah, it's weird. There's so much out of your control, even though you can try to do everything right.
What were some of the games you played? You said you played a lot of games. So what were some of the games you played that informed how you look at games today? And you can say from maybe just like enjoyment or an art standpoint.
I've always gravitated toward RPGs, I think.
What kind of RPGs?
The first one I played was Shining Force on the Genesis. But soon after that, we got a Sega CD, and then I played Lunar, and that was like just eye-opening,
changed you? Changed the course of your life type of thing?
Yeah, because that was, I don't know, like with the animated cutscenes and just, I don't know, the world and everything. I just loved Lunar. And then from there, FF7, FF8, everything.
Quick one. What's your favorite Final Fantasy?
7.
Can't believe you.
What's the right answer?
6, so obviously. Geez.
Okay. Well,
but you were a Sega kid, so you would know.
I never had a Super Nintendo. Oh
my God, you and John, shatters my whole worldview. I don't know what to think.
I think that's why John and I got along so well at the start, because
you were Sega outcasts.
Yeah, we were both Sega kids. Yeah, anything I played on the SNES, now I played on an emulator on my computer in my teens.
So you don't have that nostalgic boost.
No, not for Nintendo games.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Genesis, Game Gear, Sega CD. Never got a 32X, even though I wanted one. Probably.
Did you know anybody with the whole thing, with the CD, the 32X, and like that big double clicking in monstrosity?
Yeah.
I actually I knew a
I
guy who had the CD underneath, the 32X on top, and a game that took both.
No, I don't think I knew anyone like that. I didn't know anyone that had a 32X, which maybe was a smart decision on my parents because the only thing I would have played was Chaotix. It's not worth buying a console for one game.
Right.
And then it kind of turned into like that. For Christmas I would get a Sega console, and then my brother would get like he got PlayStation. Actually, I guess
So that must have been a tough generation for you to see that happen, huh? With the Saturn going into the Dreamcast going into the nothing.
Yeah, it for a little while, like after the Dreamcast came out, I was in like junior high. I think I fell out of games for a very short period, and that was the Dreamcast era. And so I still played like Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. And then I think I had to catch up on a bunch of Dreamcast games a little while after, just because I didn't play games for like a year or two as a teen. Well, no, I still played my PS2. I just didn't play a ton of Dreamcast at that time. But yeah, just always Sega. I've always gravitated towards Sega in general, I think. And then, yeah, later it was PS2 and stuff.
What was your favorite PS2 game? Or just give me a couple that are in your top 5.
I mean, there's obviously like Silent Hill, Silent Hill 2, 3. I don't know if I count 4 as one of them, but I do like 4 a lot as well. I really love Final Fantasy 12, actually, in part just because it is freaking gorgeous.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I always, whenever you have that conversation, what's your favorite Final Fantasy? 12 was one of my favorites. Really? Yes, really. 12 was great. And I even thought the story held together pretty well right up into the last I am God. Fooled you, enemy. Like,
the story didn't grab me. And the characters, I wish they went into more. I felt like for FF12, they set up these interesting characters that they didn't really explore until like the very end, and then it was over.
No, I totally agree. The second act's got like almost no development for those characters. I wanted to know are what's going on with Balthier and Fran? Is this a thing? What's happening?
I know.
Is this a thing? Can I just imagine it's a thing? Can we go with that? Because he was so cool.
Yeah.
Like I loved Balthier.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah, just like survival horror games, big one for me. I don't know. I try to play maybe a little bit of most genres. Not huge on FPSs. And that is to say that I've played a little bit of Halo and Half-Life 2. That's kind of it, maybe. I tried to get into Destiny, but it didn't grab me.
Yeah, I don't know if it grabbed that many people. It grabbed a lot of people's money, but
yeah, I bought the white PS4 that came with it.
I bought it sight unseen, like a dope. Like a dope.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did you ever have any other disappointments like that? Did you have any franchises you came back to for a sequel and you just were heartbroken?
I mean, most recently, I think it was Xenoblade Chronicles X. Where
How'd that go for you?
I adored Xenoblade Chronicles on the Wii. One of my favorite games. Like I put maybe like 120 hours or something crazy into it. And I even wanted to just 100% that game. And I think it just took too much time. But I still put a lot of time. Yeah. I put a lot of time into it. And then I was so excited for Chronicles X to come out, and it really grabbed me at first. And then it just, I don't know, it kind of lost me.
It was just too long. it had its time and then it just kept going. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, it has a slew of its own problems. I think maybe the biggest one is that the story isn't really there, and it's weird because part of why I liked Xenoblade on the Wii was because like the story was super good, but also they just streamlined a bunch of the stuff that slows down traditional RPGs, and it just felt really fun to play. And now in this new one, I think the battles are still fun, but now that it's kind of missing that story, it doesn't have that thing to really like propel you through the game.
Kind of missing the motivation.
Yeah.
What's my motivation?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like even just the other night, I tried to pick it up again because I didn't even get terribly far into it. And I couldn't. I was like underleveled and healing sucks.
Are you ever able to do that though?
Pick up a game?
Re-pick up a game.
Oh,
I find I'm really not. Like once I put it down, once I say to myself, I don't care enough to play it right now, I'm pretty much saying I don't care enough to play it. Is that how you do it? Or are you actually successful in coming back to a game?
I want to say that I do, but I don't think I do. It sucks because like I was, what was it like during the prototype or earlier than that? Like I was playing Monster Hunter 4 and Bloodborne at the same time. And both of those are very like intense, stressful games. And then between that and then doing like very stressful work, it was like too overwhelming. And I had to put the games down and just focus on the work. And then I kind of never got back to either game. And they're still they're still like on my list of. Yeah,
I cannot even imagine trying to get back into a Souls game. Like, where am I? Is what we say.
Yeah. I did put down Dark Souls for a little bit, and then I got back into it, and then I got stuck again, and I still never beat Dark Souls. So I don't know.
Have you beat any Souls game?
Demon Souls.
Oh, the only one I haven't beat. Damn.
Oh yeah, I needed help finishing it. I had John come in and help me beat it.
You had to come back up.
Yeah.
You had a phantom do the work for you. Yeah. All right, so you went from being the animation lead on Skullgirls to both the animation and art lead and now story lead for Indivisible.
Yeah.
You are bogged down with roles and responsibilities. What about your expanded roles and responsibilities did you not anticipate and maybe could live without?
So I think one thing that maybe a lot of people don't realize when it comes to being an art director is when you become the art director, you stop drawing. Because you have so many things to kind of like look over and manage and approve that you kind of like instruct other people what to draw, but your job is just that instruction. You're like you don't really get to draw that much yourself. And like we've been having this kind of problem, I guess, with me at work where I've been putting in overtime, and we're not at the point that we should be doing overtime yet. Like ideally, we won't have crunch at all if we plan this right. But I have been putting in extra hours because those extra hours for me are when I get to draw. So like this whole weekend, I was gonna just animate, and I was really looking forward to it. And everyone's like, "No, you don't work. You got to take your weekends off." But it's like I don't get to animate during the week. I have to, I have to assign things. I have to fix things. I'm not creating anything during the week. So now my what should be my time off is now my time to actually get to the work that I want to do. So that's kind of like the art director and lead animator thing is that, yeah, I'm just not drawing as much as I'd like to be. And then the head of story thing kind of came about just because I think it just comes down to that I'm generally organized. And
What is the head of story for this project? What does that mean to this project? Are you the keeper of the lore Bible? Is that essentially what's happening, or?
No, not necessarily, because I think our story on Indivisible is very collaborative, and I don't really consider myself a terribly creative person, but I think I'm okay at kind of like picking out problems or trying to like connect idea A to idea B, and so I've kind of taken it upon myself to like look at all these ideas that everyone's coming up with and try to make them work. And that, I think that's kind of what this head of story thing has been about. And it's a very recent thing. So I think it's just going to be like, I'll be the one kind of like interfacing with our writers and just kind of like representing the team's interests to the writers.
Interesting. So you've got basically this wide display of ideas that you kind of felt like needed a little hammering to be believable in context with each other.
I think so.
So you kind of you just felt that natural urge, and so the position kind of arose organically, where it's like, okay, everybody's got these ideas. How do all these ideas work in a believable world?
Right. Yeah. Because a lot of the creative backbone in Indivisible is still Alex, and he's the one still coming up with like a lot of the core story ideas. He's coming up with the characters and just the concepts in general and how this world works and everything. And then what I've just been doing is like asking questions like, hey, we need to know this for this to work. How do we flesh that out? How do we make Ajna's kind of like emotional arc believable if we want this and this and this to happen, and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not necessarily coming up with a ton of the ideas, but I'm just trying to like make them work.
It's a very unique role within a kind of a script writing team when you say, I'm not necessarily making the things that go into it. I'm making all the things that go into it work better.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting.
I'm trying anyways. I don't know. I haven't really done this before, but we'll see. Maybe it'll suck. I don't know.
Is there anything in particular that, because this is interesting, because this actually kind of ties back into you personally, where you feel maybe a bit of the two worlds pull. And this story is kind of almost inherently framed in that context. It has the supernatural, but the worldly powers at play are very much East and West.
Mm-hmm.
And so is there anything that you feel like you would want to have in this story that you feel would be important using this, metaphor of a story?
Well, I think one thing that's kind of important to us on this game is that a lot of RPGs, or just a lot of stories in general, will start in a Western world, and then maybe if it's a story about them traveling, they'll travel to the Eastern world, and it's like foreign and strange, and all that kind of stuff. And a big part of what we want to do with this game is that you start in an Eastern-centric world, and that's your home. That's not the foreign place. And in this game, you will travel to other places, and all the other places, including we'll have a European-inspired world. That, if we do our job right, that will feel foreign. So we're not defaulting to that whiteness or just European, whatever. That's not the default. And I think
that's an entrenched standard even in Japanese games.
Right.
I remember playing early Japanese RPGs like Dragon Warrior. Dragon Quest and these, but I played Dragon Warrior, and it was, the music was European. There were rondos and the style was European. There were European castles and European armor and knights and dragons, and this is a game from Japan,
right?
So, and it's been like that for a long time,
right?
So yeah, it definitely is an entrenched standard. Not even in the way I think most people might kind of knee-jerk react to. It's kind of been a Japanese RPG standard for so many years,
right? And yeah, that's kind of exactly the thing we're trying to get away from. It's that we don't think that a European setting is the default setting. So what we're trying to do is make an Eastern, in particular, kind of like a Southeast Asian inspired setting. That's your home. That's where you come from. So I don't know. I think that kind of comes from, that's a big part of Alex being Filipino, Burmese. And then it's like, John's Korean, Richard is Korean, I'm half Japanese. And it's like, I feel like bringing this side of maybe defaulting to like Asianness is the start, is something that kind of like we all want to bring to this game. Yeah.
One of the aside questions that I actually would ask Alex if I thought Alex would ever do an interview. I myself worked on a game that tanked in pre-development. It was essentially about, one sentence pitch is, what if the Japanese feudal state had developed in Africa? So Africa is the home. Europe is the away. It's the different away place.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I've always been interested in concepts like that. And one of the things that I struggled with when I was writing some of those story beats back when it was being worked on was, how do you make Europeans others without making them inhumanly like evil? Like how do you say, okay, these people, they don't come from here, they are threatening things, not peaceful, but also not like faceless demons. I didn't want them to seem just like, well, the white people are the bad guys. Like, because I felt like that kind of reductive simplicity is something any teenager could have written. And I was trying to do more than that. You have the whole world basically inside this game planned. Have you run personally into things where there'll be an issue of how to make any given character, whether European, African, South American, wherever they're supposed to be from in this metaphorical world, be believable and not just, hey, this is the evil bad guy part of the world?
Right. I think this kind of comes back to, like, this is something that we've been talking about at work a lot, where I think writing a good villain is not just a guy or a girl, it's not just a person that wants to do evil and kill everyone and destroy the world. Like, it's just very one-dimensional. I think a good villain, in their mind, thinks that they are doing the right thing. They have to have a motivation that is believable, that you can like relate to in a way, even though as the protagonist or the good guy or whatever, even if you think that motivation is just the wrong one to have. And I think, we could use like Breaking Bad as an example. I don't know if this is spoilers. I'm not gonna call.
This show's been over for a few years now. If they haven't seen, if you haven't seen Breaking Bad at this point, you need to pause. I'll put a time mark in the description. Whatever.
Right.
He makes meth. Spoiler.
Yeah. So Walter White is a villain. He's his own villain of this show. But I think what makes it work is that from the start, he has motivations that you relate to, even though he just goes about getting what he wants in the completely wrong way. And I think that's just an approach that, works really well for writing believable villains, where they just have to want something that they think will work for them, is good for them, that they really believe in. And it can't just be, I'm going to destroy this planet because I hate it. Like, well, maybe they hate it, but why did they hate it? Like, where did that come from? So it's the same thing. Like, if you're trying to like make Europeans the other, it's not just a matter of saying like, oh, the white man is evil or whatever. It's like, well, what are they doing that the protagonist disagrees with? And I think that's all it really comes down to. It's not just about making someone evil or good. There's a lot more depth into like motivations that makes it believable.
I'm very interested to see. You don't have to tell me anything, obviously. I'm getting into story stuff, and you may or may not have already developed. But one of the things I'm very interested in seeing is how the interplay of whatever the Iron Kingdom's form of colonialism comes to be, and how that's explored. Because the thing is, people tend to look back on far-flung historical situations and say, well, okay, that's how it went. That wasn't such a good thing. But it's like you said, I'm sure none of the people trying to make money or forge things or gather resources, do anything, thought to themselves like, I just woke up feeling really evil today. Like,
right, exactly.
It was more just how the things went, and people aggressively sought their fortunes selfishly, in that way. And so now we look back and we can point at, the colonialism of the European nations on various parts of the world as a fairly negative influence. But at the time, I don't think anybody was thinking like, yeah, I just want to really mess up the world. Like,
right.
I just want to totally alter these countries' fates, irreparably. So yeah, I'm very interested to see what that means in the Indivisible world, how those places interact. And, because there's also the heroine of this world is Soma, basically, and so it's interesting, to say what does that mean for this whole world, and so I'm very interested in seeing that. So I don't ever tell me, don't ever tell me, because I'm gonna play it in its final form.
Hopefully, we'll make it work out. But yeah, again, it's just kind of like about different perspectives, and maybe someone is just doing what might be an objectively bad thing, but they probably think they're doing something right that will benefit them or their people. It's just about showing them that they're wrong or whatever,
right. Right. I mean, even Hitler thought he was doing right at some point.
Right.
Just because one guy thinks it's right doesn't make it so.
Right.
At this point, the fans are already aware of what you might hope to accomplish with your animation, given that you've spoken at length about kind of your intent and how you like to animate things and what we've already seen in general. As an art lead, because I've kind of already asked you about the story, but as an art lead, what kind of mark do you hope to leave on Indivisible? If you could read the review of the game, a year and a half, 2 years from now, and the part where they're talking about the art, what would you ideally want a person playing the game and telling another person about the art? What would you want them to say to their friend why the art's so great?
Like if they say it's well animated, they like the designs and the palettes and just the graphics and stuff. I mean, that would make me happy. I think one thing we're trying to achieve in this game particularly, that we totally did not get right in the prototype, is kind of like getting these 2D sprites to look cohesive in 3D backgrounds. So that's kind of one of the things we're trying to tackle right now, is how to make the whole look cohesive. And again, like, I think everyone noticed in the prototype that the characters didn't look like they belonged in the background. And we definitely want to make the backgrounds look kind of like more illustrative, but still work in our pipeline where we need to make these levels modularly, so we can kind of just, I don't know, build whatever out of a set number of pieces. Because in Skullgirls, the backgrounds, and this is, it's all weird because I'm not really an environment artist, but now I'm kind of like tasked with, I don't know, putting this all together. But in Skullgirls, the backgrounds look illustrative because they started as illustrations and then they're just kind of like chopped up into pieces, and we kind of like, add some depth to them. But in the end, they still look like paintings that just kind of like rotate a little bit.
Right. And I mean, yeah, just by virtue of the amount of work that would go into one state of Skullgirls, or the huge environments that are going to go into Indivisible, it kind of would be like impossible to do that with every single screen a person might be on.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do is, we actually have an awesome graphics programmer, Rob, working on it right now, where he's giving us just like new tools to work with so that we can make the 3D backgrounds look good. and just make them look as good as possible so that they mesh with the 2D sprites. So if we can pull that off, I will be very happy.
Okay. So last one.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to a young artist who looks up to Mariel Cartwright and hopes to one day do as she does and become project lead on a project she cares about? So if there's a person out there right now saying, man, I really love Mariel's artwork, and man, if I could just do what she does, that would be awesome. What would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
Well, I think it's maybe the same advice that I would give anyone who wants to work in art or in games, or just any kind of like art related field. You have to make the thing you want to see in your spare time. Like, I think people only notice my work or what I've done, or Alex or John, or like anyone that I know. People notice our work because in our free time we're just creating that stuff anyways. Now it's just the case that we're fortunate enough that it is also our jobs. But even if it wasn't my job to be creating the art that I do, if I worked at a grocery store, in my spare time, I would still be doing the same things. And I think that's important for anyone that wants to get into a field like this, where it's like you have to do it. You just have to make it yourself. And for a lot of people that want to work in games, it's like, try to, if you can't find a couple of people that could maybe like put together a small game in your free time, just draw, just put your effort toward that goal. And I think people will notice it, because if you apply for a job and you're just like, I have all these ideas, I've never written them down, or it's like, I'm good at art, but I've never drawn anything. It's like, it doesn't get you anywhere. So yeah, you just have to do the thing that you want to do, and then hopefully you'll just start getting paid for it later.
It's surprising how uniform that advice is with at least the people I've talked to so far for this series, is that several people have said, do the thing you want to do, get really good at it, show people you're good at it, and eventually you will be able to move into making that your job.
Yeah.
If you are motivated enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really it. Just do the thing you want to do anyways.
Well, that's pretty much everything I had to ask. Mariel Cartwright, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to me. It was very informative. I learned a lot, and it was very fun.
Well, thank you for having me. That was a lot of fun.